Tia here. I'm watching Live for Love TV. Live for Love TV, very educative program. Please subscribe, like, and share. Bless up, Aya.
Welcome back to Live for Love TV. Today's the 9th day of the 3rd month of the 23rd year inside the 21st century. Hope everyone's doing well out there, trying to get a good angle here. Anyway, today, you know, I always go, I'm ad-lib YouTuber. I don't write anything. I don't store anything. I speak from the soul, as they say, or speak from the internal. So anything I say is as I see it at that time. You can hold me to it if you want, and if later on I say something that sounds a little bit off kilter compared to what I said before, it's based on what I've learned at that time. So here we go. If I ask most people what is their favorite film throughout all time, most people who watch films, especially people of my generation, will probably know very quickly. And if I ask them what's their favorite TV program, I'm sure you'll get a myriad of different programs coming up. Anybody who knows me and has been around me for, personally for years, will know that I, without reservation, will come up and say my favorite TV program is Mr. Columbo, or Columbo, yeah, starring Peter Falk, a TV series. Now, I know I'm not far from being alone in that, because this was the most popular cop show, police show, or private detective show of all time. That is without doubt, that's without question, nobody can deny it. So lots of people must like it. And I'll say this for those who are of my generation, round about my age group, maybe older, a little bit younger. When Peter Falk did his first pilot, Columbo, it was in 1969, was a film, and it took a few years before they brought it back as a TV series. Now, there are a few things that make me like this, and there's a few things that make millions of people throughout the world like this particular show. And then one of the major things is that throughout that period, cop shows were to a penny. There were so many of them. I mean, I couldn't even, mention them. I mean, you can put them in the comments, the ones that you can remember coming back from the 70s and the 80s. I'll say a few, but I don't remember so many of them. They just went past me. But there was a few unique things about Columbo. And one of the major things that was a unique thing about the Columbo series and the Columbo film was that he didn't carry a gun. Now, it's a TV program, so only on TV, Hollywood could he get away with that. If he was a real American policeman, he would have to have carried a gun, especially a murder detective. But anyway, he didn't carry a gun. Every program you can think of, that goes back to the days of the TV programs. You can talk about Harry O, Cannon, even the man in the wheelchair, Ironside. He even had his gun hidden down somewhere. I don't know. I'm trying to think of trying to get them coming back. Kojak, the black actor that played Tenafly. Cannon, I think I said Cannon already, didn't I? But anyway, whole heap of them. Starsky and Hutch, Miami Vice that came later. They all came out throughout the 70s and the 80s, during the same time that Columbo was going on and on and on, and they died a death. You can't find any of these on reruns anywhere in the world. You go around looking for any of these, you can't find them. Macmillan and Wife, they were so popular at their time, but you can't find any of them at all. Telly Savalas, But if you look on your screens, probably where you are, just look. You may not see it today, but within the next week or month, you're going to see reruns of Columbo on and on and on and on. I think it went 4 to 5 decades worth. I mean, it was the most popular program that lasted, especially cop show, throughout that period of time. It outlasted almost all of these, what do you call them? Not just sitcoms, but all of these soap operas, Maybe not the UK ones, but they definitely outlasted all the American ones. And as I said, he was unique because he didn't carry a gun. Now, his character was based on Arthur Conan Doyle's character in the Sherlock Holmes. So he was like an American Sherlock Holmes, but a modern version. But there's a few things that differ from him with Sherlock Holmes, and I'll go into that as well, because even though it was based on that sort of, right, because there's no Columbo books, it didn't come from any book. It was just something that they put together as a TV series, but it didn't come together in his book. So it's kind of based loosely on Sherlock Holmes, but there are a lot of major differences with the Sherlock Holmes. So that's where he comes from, and that's how we get to know him as a very intelligent cop that doesn't actually need a gun. But there, as I said, he also, in his time, played opposite some of the great actors of his time. They were the criminals that he was playing against, and you had people like Ray Milland. People who know Ray Milland from Dial M for Murder, and so he's a movie actor. You got William Shatner, you got Leonard Nimoy, you got Patrick McGoogan. You can go on and on and on. All these actors that he played alongside. This guy David Cassidy's father, Mr. Cassidy. A lot of actors that he played alongside were actually established film actors. They were top actors, and they were playing the criminals that he had to investigate and eventually bring down. Excellent acting. And then you go further than that. Now this is where the difference is for all of the cop shows that we saw in America that I can remember, and especially even in the UK, was all of the criminals were poor and working class people. That's all the criminals in every cop show. Just go back to Kojak, Cannon, all of them. They either look like me or they're poor working class white people. Yeah, that was the criminals. But when you came to Columbo, the only working class person in Columbo was him. He was a poor one. And he was going up against the rich in California, the rich and the status people who always looked down on him, which was obviously their biggest mistake. They looked down on him because he was poor and he didn't come from their environment. And when you consider to see criminals on TV that were rich, millionaires, that were murderers, we weren't seeing that on any of the other programs that we were watching at that time. And that's another great reason why not only do I like it, but I believe it survived throughout that time, because it went against the grain. It pitched a working class person against the brains of the multi-millionaire and the higher echelons people. And so people are always rooting for Columbo. The regular people always want him to bring these big heads down with their multi-million pounds and think they can do this and look down on him and murder people. So it's got that feel with it. Also, Peter Falk came from comedy, so he's basically a comedian. People like him, Jack Lemmon, they're like the American versions of the Goons. They play these kind of hilarious little parts that they used to play before he came into this Columbo part. So he adds his own inevitable little bits of comedy in a serious part. So he's kind of playing a serious part, but he's being a natural comedian, was able to put these little dry senses of humour into his things, and they're not massive jokes or anything, but they're just comic, comic stuff that you can see, and it's just hilarious. So as I'm thinking about it, and you can see I'm a bit of a Columbo man. Yeah, you can see that I've watched them. I've got box series of them. I've watched the reruns. I've seen them. Even my children probably can't stand when Columbo comes on because they know that I'm going to be watching it, even though I've probably seen it X amount of times. That's a level of when something is good that you can watch it many times and many times over. And some of the writers in the early days for Columbo were people like Stephen Bocco, who went on to do Hill Street Blues and all these other great things. And also Steven Spielberg, I think he's close to Encounters of the Third Kind. I can't remember if he was the one in behind Star Wars, but Steven Spielberg was one of the early writers. So you can see the quality that this man had behind him. He had writers, he had actors to play against who were top actors in their own right. So all of that came together with a story and a character that made this thing run. And I'm telling you, the reruns going on and on. The man's been dead for, I don't know, had 10 years or whatever. And you can still see it. They're still rerunning it. They're not rerunning Tenafly. They're not rerunning Kojak or Starsky and Hutch, Miami Vice, Cannon, Ironside. I don't know. Harry O. There's so many of them. You can't see reruns of any of these. These things have died a death, and they were popular. In fact, they were just as popular as Columbo in their day, but they didn't have the qualities that he had. All these car chases and shootouts, they just don't last. They don't last because you can reproduce them, but that kind of sleuth kind of Sherlock Holmes kind of thing that he did was what kept him going, and people just love to see it. And the endings, I mean, not all the endings, but most of the endings were classics, absolute classics. There's one with, if for those of you who are thinking back like I am, there's one with Dick Van Dyke with one of the greatest endings you're ever going to see in any Columbo. It's absolutely a classic. I'm thinking about it now. I'm not going to mention it, but I'm thinking about it. So you just go and look for that one with Dick Van Dyke, and the way he gets captured in the end, it's amazing. But anyway, I thought I'd reminisce with some of you today on one of my favorite programs, and and as I said, it's not just my favorite program, it's the favorite program of anybody who watches cop shows, anybody who's watched anything from the 1969 pilot series right through to the 2000s. The thing ran from series to series to series, and it kept him in money, kept him famous. Yes, he got typecast after that, and for that part, but who cares when you're making that kind of money and you've got that kind of fan base. And the thing is running and rerunning and rerunning and rerunning, and it ain't going to stop rerunning. It is not going to stop rerunning. Long after I'm dead, they're going to be rerunning Columbos. That's how good it was at the time. So anyway, a little bit different here on Live for Love TV. If you're a Columbo person like me, go back and watch some of the series and see if you can find anything in there that I'm talking about today. Take care, Live for Love TV.